Okay, Dr. Karraker, what are you doing?
Dr. Payton! I
What?
just found a marbled salamander under this log.
Oh my God.
That is amazing.
That is.
I can't believe it.
That's your lucky day.
It's my lucky day. Look at how beautiful that marbled salamander is.
That's incredible.
So this is Ambystoma opacum, the marbled salamander. I'm going to set it into this container just for a minute while I talk about it so it doesn't get too warm in my hand. Can you see that salamander, Dr. Payton?
Could you angle the Tupperware? That's helpful. Thank you.
So this is Ambystoma opacum. This is the marbled salamander. It's in the family Ambystomatidae. This is a mole salamander. They're called mole salamanders because they share burrows with rodents and insectivores. And this salamander was just under this large log. I pulled the log over and there it was. And I was very excited because they can be hard to find sometimes. So this salamander is an adult. You can see the size of it relative to my hand. They're a little bit smaller than spotted salamanders. And they breed in vernal pools such as this. Now this salamander has a really interesting life history, and it's quite different from that of Ambystoma maculatum, the spotted salamander. The spotted salamander, as you know, breeds in the spring, like right now, and we were just looking for egg masses in this vernal pool. They haven't laid eggs here yet, but they will soon. But this species, Ambystoma opacum, the marbled salamander, actually breeds in the fall. And so on a rainy day, a rainy night in September, October, the males and females will come to this vernal pool, which will be dry. They will engage in courtship with the males, trying to convince the females to mate with them. And then when the male becomes convinced that the female is interested, he'll drop a spermatophore on the ground. And the spermatophore is about that tall. It's got a jelly base with a little sperm cap on top. The female, if indeed she's interested, she'll walk along and she'll pick up that spermatophore, the sperm cap, with her cloaca, and then her eggs will be fertilized internally. At that point, the male will go off and do nothing else to contribute to the family, and the female...
Dr. Karraker, sorry to interrupt you, but I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Payton?
So I understand for spotted salamanders, when there's water in the pond, that the spermatophores put on the pond bottom, and they'll go through this elaborate courtship display, and the female picks the spermatophore up. But you just told me the marbled salamander that you have in your hand,
yes, comes
to the dry pond. So where is the spermatophore for the marbled salamanders?
It's sitting on the leaves.
It's sitting on the leaves.
So they drop it on the ground.
Ah.
That's right. So spotted salamanders drop them on the pond bottom on top of leaves or sticks, and the marbled salamanders drop them on the bottom of the pond. But it's a dry pond. Does
Right.
that make sense, Dr. Payton?
It does. I've never seen a marbled salamander spermatophore. So
I don't know if I have either, come
Yeah.
to think of it.
yeah,
But I believe that's what they do.
right. They must.
They must, right? They don't have internal fertilization.
Right.
They don't have external
Right.
fertilization.
Right.
They have internal fertilization. Well, maybe that's why we should go next September, October, Dr. Payton,
Yeah.
to a vernal pool with marbled salamanders so
Right.
we can learn.
Right. So we've seen some spotted salamander egg masses that look like a corn dog, according to you. So, but what do marbled salamander eggs masses look like?
Well,
If it's a dry pond basin.
a marbled salamander doesn't really have an egg mass in the classic sense. There's no jelly, there's no globular mass. Marbled salamanders are really interesting in that after the female picks up a spermatophore, the male will go off back into the forest. The female will find some large log, such as the one behind you, probably not this one, but such as the one behind you that is partly extending into the water right now. And she will crawl under that log, and she will lay her eggs beneath that log. The eggs are completely terrestrial. I'm gonna turn.
We're going to turn so you can see the pond and Dr. Karraker. Two good things at once.
Oh, isn't that so nice, Dr. Peyton?
Yeah.
So she will lay her eggs under that log, just below where she thinks the high water line will be, or near the high water line. And she will guard her eggs. They have parental care. She will guard her eggs until they hatch. Now those eggs, they're small. They've got a hard outer shell that prevents desiccation, helps to prevent desiccation. And they don't have that jelly globular mass around them like the spotted salamander eggs do. So the female will stay with those eggs maybe for a month, maybe for 2 months, and she's guarding them. She's engaging in parental care, and she will, if an invertebrate predator comes along to try to eat the eggs, she will fight off that invertebrate or eat the invertebrate. And if one of her eggs becomes infected with a fungus or a mold, she will eat that egg to try to keep it from spreading to the other eggs, the fungus or mold. She will also turn the eggs periodically. She'll wrap her body around them to help keep them moist. And then as soon as we get those late fall rains and the pool fills up and starts to inundate those eggs, she will leave and she'll go back to dry ground, at which time those eggs will hatch and they will become free-swimming larvae in the vernal pool through the fall and winter. Now, Dr. Peyton, why do you think this salamander is so strange? Why do you think they breed in the fall instead of in the spring like a lot of other amphibians?
Well, I always thought because these vernal pools are relatively small, that they tend to exhibit temporal segregation in breeding chronology rather than spatial segregation. So that it's adaptive. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So it's good to have them spacing out the timing of when they're breeding in the ponds. But I could be wrong.
What might be another answer? So you mean to reduce competition
Right.
for resources?
Exactly.
That is a really good idea, Dr. Peyton, and that's probably part of the equation. So if you've got a lot of spotted salamander larvae feeding on small invertebrates in this pond, but you've also got a lot of marbled salamander larvae at the same time, at the same size, everybody's competing for the same-sized invertebrates, right?
Correct.
So that's one part of the equation, Dr. Peyton.
I just thought of something too.
Dr. Peyton, what did you think of?
Well, the other thing too is that given their breeding chronology, right about now, March, there's a lot of potential food resources that become available for them for the marbled salamander larvae to feed on.
There are? Like what, Dr. Peyton?
Well, we just saw some wood frog egg masses and some spotted salamander egg masses, and potentially not the eggs, but maybe their larvae might be a food resource for them, potentially.
Dr. Peyton, that's brilliant. A+. Indeed.
I love it when I get good grades.
He probably got nothing but A+.
I didn't. I'll tell everybody, I'll tell all the students right now, I was a B student.
I was a B and C student. That is probably the other half of the equation, Dr. Peyton, that we will start to see these wood frog egg masses, the eggs start to hatch first, and those wood frog tadpoles will begin congregating around the egg mass they hatched from. They're really helpless when they hatch. They can't swim fast. They have no defenses. They can't escape. And at that time, we will see marbled salamander larvae, which at that time will be about this large, all around those egg masses feeding on wood frog tadpoles. And then a few weeks or a month later, the spotted salamander egg masses will begin, those eggs will begin hatching. And small spotted salamander larvae, which are also helpless and can't swim quickly, will begin falling out of those egg masses, and those marbled salamanders will be hunting around in the leaf litter, preying on both species.
Right.
Good answer, Dr. Payton.
Thank you very much.
So I just want to emphasize, Dr. Payton, that you're an ornithologist, so you may not think about these things all the time, but it's really interesting that we have two species of salamanders in the same family, Ambystomatidae. One of those species, Ambystom immaculatum, the spotted salamander, breeds in a wetland in the spring. The other species in that family, Ambystoma opacum, the marbled salamander, breeds in the fall and breeds on dry ground. It's really amazing that you'd see such divergent reproductive ecology within the same family of salamanders. But again, just to reemphasize, it probably has to do partly with competition for resources and partly for predation reasons. The last thing I want to say, Dr. Payton, is I want to look at this salamander and see if I can try to figure out if it's a male or a female. Ooh. So, these salamanders bred in the fall, so I wouldn't expect them to have secondary sexual characteristics that are particularly obvious at this time. Now, Dr. Payton, remind us, what's a primary sexual characteristic?
Dr. Payton's not thinking clearly this morning.
It's Saturday morning and Dr. Payton's tired and he hasn't had his coffee. So a primary sexual characteristic is the gonads, either ovaries or testes. So we call those primary sexual characteristics. Dr. Payton, can I see those characteristics without killing this salamander?
No.
No, because they're held internally within the body. So if I wanted to know the sex of this salamander and I can't look at primary sexual characteristics, what can I use?
Maybe secondary sexual characteristics.
Secondary sexual characteristics, correct. And what those are things that are displayed by either males or females, and they're produced as a result of hormones. So for example, this salamander is either a male or female. It has either ovaries or testes. And it produces pheromones, either higher levels of estrogen, higher levels of testosterone, and those cause the expression of secondary sexual characteristics in the animal. In the case of these salamanders, the female won't display any secondary sexual characteristics, but the males will display a swollen cloaca during the breeding season. So we're not in the breeding season right now, but sometimes you can tell after the breeding season. So let me take a look. So this salamander, if we can
we're not be able to see this, unfortunately, very well for the viewers at home.
Just get a little bit close.
Yeah.
This salamander does not appear to have a swollen cloaca. So that means either this is a female Ambystoma opacum, or it's a male outside of the breeding season not expressing those characteristics. So I can't really tell, but if I found this salamander in September, October during the breeding season, I would surely be able to tell. Don't call me Shirley.
Never will.
Do you have
So we saw earlier that in redback salamanders, the shape of the snout is one characteristic. Can we use that for ambystomas?
We cannot.
Okay.
Good question.
Can we look at the size difference of individuals to tell if it's a male or a female?
We cannot, usually.
Right.
I would say.
Can we use, what about the color pattern, the number of spots or the number of stripes?
We cannot.
Can we use that to recognize individuals?
Absolutely 100%. And various people have used patterns of spots, or in this case, this marbling pattern, these saddle-like silver patches across the back of the salamander. to individually identify. I talked about how Doug Gill, in his classic work from 1978 or 1979 on the red-spotted newt, used the pattern of spots on the back and the size of those spots to identify 8,500 individuals. We use the patterning of the belly pattern on the Hong Kong newt in Hong Kong to identify over 4,000 individuals. And people have done this with marbled salamanders and spotted salamanders. You can take an image